Today on Week in Review, the Skeena Bulkley Valley has a new MP representing them. We recently spoke to that new MP right after his election victory, and a report looks into the potential future of the NDP. Hello, I'm Cael Maslin, and thank you for joining us here on Week in Review, where we cover all of the news here in the Northwest from this past week. Prior to the election, we covered a story in which a local Indigenous band didn't want signs posted on their land without permission being granted first. Now we've received responses on the proper protocol. CFTK's Cael Maslin takes a closer look.
When the Gitwangak Band Council asked the Conservative Party to take down signs that had popped up on their territory unexpectedly, the party said those signs were on a highway right-of-way and they weren't removing them.
Campaign team simply came back and said, can you take pictures of where they are because they're on a right-of-way, which is a very colonial way of thinking, and it just reinforces our point that he's not respecting how to have respectful dialogue with Indigenous peoples in this area especially.
They also asked if the other guys were asked to take their signs down, but it turns out the other guys had asked permission. Now, CFTK News has received responses from both the BC government and the Union of BC Indian Chiefs on proper protocol in this situation. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip of the UBCIC said that First Nations have the inherent right to decide what takes place on their lands, including whether political signs are welcome. That right doesn't disappear during an election. He went on to say political parties need to understand that placing signs without engagement or permission shows a disregard for Indigenous authority and the principles of reconciliation. And according to the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, they said that shoulder and right-of-way widths can vary. They went on to say that the Ministry of Transportation recommends political candidates seek permission from the First Nation to place signs along sections of highway through reserve land. The Gitwangak Band chose not to remove those signs, as they said they did not want to feed into a destructive narrative.
I kind of said hope floats. I was really hopeful that he could just respect our position. His 5 little signs from within our reserve boundaries isn't going to sway this election. And quite frankly, this is the only riding where if every eligible Indigenous voter signed up to vote, we can actually sway who gets in this federal riding. And so why he would want any more dissent or discourse of lack of respect is a little bit beyond me, because we can just encourage as many Indigenous people as possible to vote and recognize the harms that may come to us with denying residential schools, voting against UNDRIP for free, prior, and informed consent, and any other social reforms that are the only hope for benefiting some of the challenges that we have on reserve and off reserve, quite frankly.
For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cael Maslin.
And also before the election, we heard from one of the candidates that was looking to represent the Skeena Bulkley Valley as a federal MP talk about an issue that was seemingly being overlooked. Most of the topics that have been frequently discussed during the build-up to this election have been related to money in some form or another, regardless of if people are talking about the cost of living, the carbon tax, or the state of the budget or economy. And while other subjects like healthcare have been brought up as well, a subsection of healthcare, namely the struggles that people living with disabilities face, hasn't really been talked about all that much. Skeena Bulkley Valley MP candidate Rod Taylor of the Christian Heritage Party provided his own thoughts on why that might have happened.
People tend to think about their own issues, not about whatever struggles others may be going through. And that's a shame on our society that we don't spend more time thinking how we can help those who have challenges that we don't have, right?
And on a related note, in an attempt to assist people dealing with a disability or some other kind of difficulty resulting from a brain injury, the NDP created Bill C-277 to try and create a national strategy that knows how best to deal with these kinds of injuries. Current NDP Skeena MP Taylor Backrack has stated that his hope is that regardless of who gets into power after the election, They will work with the NDP to get this bill finalized and instituted, and Rod Taylor also talked about if they were willing to do that.
Philosophically, we know there are some great distances between us on many issues, but if they put forward a good bill that we agree is good for the people of Canada, we would certainly support it, and we'd want to work together with whoever's on the right side of moral duty as Canadians and as members of Parliament.
The Conservative and Liberal candidates for the Skeena-Bulkley Valley, Ellis Ross and Inderpaul Dillon, were reached for comment on this subject as well, but both of them were unable to reply. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cael Maslin. In the wake of the federal election's actual results, we have a new MP for the Skeena-Bulkley Valley, which marks a big change for the region. Conservative candidate Ellis Ross has been elected, having accrued over 47% of the vote as well as over 21,000 votes. Previous MP Taylor Bachrach of the NDP has since publicly stated that he gave Ellis a call to congratulate him on his win and welcomed him to his new position. Bachrach came second in the race with 39.3% of the vote and over 17,000 votes. This is the first time someone other than an NDP member won this riding since it was established in its current form back in 2004. Ross is also the first ever Indigenous person to win the riding, and with Tamara Davidson becoming the North Coast MLA last year, it's also the first time ever that the North Coast has had both an Indigenous MLA as well as an Indigenous MP. Ross also stopped by the CFTK-TV studios recently for a chat with him, saying that he's ready to be the opposition.
Well, it's not new to me. I've been in opposition in the BC legislature for 7 years as an MLA, so I understand what the role is, but it still doesn't change my priorities in terms of what I wanted to see get done for BC and Canada, and especially for our riding.
We asked Ross what his main goals would be this term.
There's a lot of goals. Affordability is a big issue. The drugs is a crisis. In BC, it's been declared since 2016. I'm not a fan of the drug experiment that took place here in the last 3 years with the BC Liberal, not the BC Liberals, but the Liberals and NDP. Not a fan of that. Not a fan of the idea of not really doing something about the criminal element. The catch and release system has got to end. I mean, for the safety of our community, safety of our members. But really, it really comes down to drugs. But overall, 15 years ago, I decided that, to the best of my ability, I was not going to allow what happened to me as a young man happen to anybody else. I struggled as a young man trying to find a job. And if you can't get a job, you can't get a credit rating. You can't get a credit rating, you can't get a mortgage. So you can't buy a house. So when I found out that I was not unique in Canada as an Aboriginal growing up on reserve, and in fact many Aboriginals face this all across Canada, I decided I was going to commit myself to make sure that everybody has an opportunity at a good life. And a good life meaning independence and being able to basically build their own lives. And I still commit to that.
Up next is a look into how Terrace's homelessness situation is looking. Welcome back. In the rest of our conversation with the MP-elect for the Skeena-Bulkley Valley riding, Ellis Ross said one of the most prominent points that came up when he was door knocking was affordability.
Mostly what I heard in the doors was affordability. Affordability and drugs, basically. And we know it, young people can't afford a house, right? And the jobs aren't there, especially in our smaller communities. Forestry has gone down because of lack of supply. Mining in the northern areas haven't gotten their permits. So a lot of these communities up along the highway there that depend on those resource jobs are actually suffering. And they were hoping for a government that could actually get the economy going. Given the assets that we have here in Northwest, we could have contributed a lot to Canada's diversification of trade globally.
We asked Ross if he thought he'd still be able to get much done for the region in a Liberal minority government.
I'm not sure. Not with Bill C-69. There was talk that this government, this Liberal government, actually didn't really support pipelines, for example, inside Canada. And we didn't really see a plan except for counter tariffs and some type of negotiation with the United States. And we didn't really hear about diversification. Either way, Canada, you can't be so dependent on the United States or else this is going to happen again. I mean, 98% of all oil gets piped down to the United States, either for their own domestic purposes or for export. Our natural gas in BC, a lot of people don't know it, but all our natural gas basically goes across our borders to the United States and elsewhere. It doesn't go overseas to Asia, not yet. We'll have to wait and see what Canada says about phase 2 of LNG Canada, what the government does. Because the BC government actually just loosened their restrictions on LNG Canada phase 2 just a few weeks ago. They basically said that, okay, LNG Canada phase 2 doesn't have to be net zero, it has to be net zero ready. So they're basically putting it into the federal government's ball court now to see what happens there. So we're still not out of the woods in terms of exporting LNG to Asia and different parts of the world.
As the future of the NDP is in question after their less than stellar showing in the federal election, we'll look into what might come next for the party. The recent federal election was a rough one for the New Democratic Party, as party leader Jagmeet Singh stepped down after losing his riding, and the party lost its official status in the House of Commons. Even their hold on the Skeena-Bulkley Valley riding that they had maintained since 2004 was unsafe, as now former MP Taylor Bachrach was defeated by Ellis Ross of the Conservative Party. But despite Ross's victory, Bachrach doesn't have any regrets over how things played out for his re-election bid, and reflected on what his party was able to do during his tenure as MP.
I'm really proud of the way that we ran the campaign. You know, I always wanted to practice politics with respect, and respect for everyone, no matter what their perspective is. And yeah, I'm really proud of how we showed up and tried to do right by people. You know, I think some of what we accomplished as a caucus with only 25 members is going to stand the test of time. And it's really going to be a legacy for future generations of Canadians, especially dental care and pharmacare, new labor laws that protect the rights of workers. Those are things that are going to last, I think, for generations. So yeah, lots to feel good about.
Former Stikine MLA and NDP member Nathan Cullen also gave his thoughts on what the NDP might try to end up accomplishing in the future, despite their now more limited presence in Parliament.
I think that just based on this past Parliament, where the NDP used the seats they had at the time to negotiate public dental care for 9 million Canadians, which is really great. If you don't have dental care, you can go to the dentist now. It's not a small thing. And are in the midst of signing agreements on pharmacare. So people who need diabetes medicine are now not paying as much as $1,000 a month out of pocket to stay alive. Those kinds of things were a result of trying to make Parliament work, get things done. The party wasn't rewarded for it politically, but I think there is still a mood within New Democrats, even with these tough results, to continue to try to make the place work for Canadians. And when I was in Parliament, that was something I heard all the time. Like, we watch the news, you guys are yelling at each other all the time. Is there any chance where people could start to work together?
Even with the election results not going their way, the NDP seats could potentially still hold some sway, as the Liberals came up just short of a majority government. But until their next major course of action is determined, what the future holds for the NDP is very unclear. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cael Maslin. Now for a report that looks into a recently conducted survey that is looking to help get a better grasp of Terrace's current homeless situation. During this past Friday, the Kisan Society ran the City of Terrace's annual homeless count, which is where volunteers walked around the community as they were looking to hear from anyone who either didn't pay rent or were housing themselves in an unconventional manner, like sleeping in their vehicle or staying in shelters frequently. But for anyone who was looking to learn of the survey's results, those likely won't be made public for a while.
Cael Society and other on-the-ground organizations don't actually keep the surveys or process them. So that is done by BC Housing. They're the ones that, BC Housing is the organization that runs the count, and we probably won't know the results for some months.
Regardless of what the results end up being, homelessness continues to be a massive issue in the Northwest. And while more of the advanced ideas and bigger possible solutions to these problems should more than likely come from BC Housing, local organizations like the Cael Society have some thoughts of their own on what to do.
I think a lot of organizations that are on the ground kind of already have a general idea of what clients need, and that's generally more housing, and not just housing, but housing with supports.
Another point of the survey that can really be beneficial as well is also highlighting the fact that appearances can be deceiving, and someone being homeless doesn't automatically mean that they're having to sleep on the street with a newspaper blanket.
A lot of times we think of a specific kind of image of a person who's experiencing homelessness. The count is great because we really try to include people who might consider themselves, or who are maybe just unhoused or not securely housed. So somebody might have a camper that they're staying in, but if they're not paying a site fee, we would consider that unhoused. People might be couch surfing with friends and family. That's not really stable housing because you don't know where you're going to be tomorrow or next week. So I think having those numbers is really important, not just for housing and service providers, but I think it really helps to illustrate to the rest of the community who is experiencing it, what they're coming from, and I think it helps us understand that the impacts that we feel beyond homelessness, we can understand the root causes a little bit, because we know that homelessness has a huge impact in the community.
Luckily, even with the many problems and struggles that result from homelessness, people can still get help from shelters like the Garage and the Cael Shelter, with other helpful services being offered at the Turning Points building on 444 Lake Ellis Avenue as well. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cael Maslin. After the break, the Skeena Valley Farmers Market is set to start up this weekend. Welcome back. During this weekend, a weekly event in Terrace that begins in the spring and lasts until the later days of the fall will kick off its 2025 run. This upcoming Saturday is set to see the Skeena Valley Farmers Market in Terrace open up for the first time this year, and the excitement to begin another season is quite present for the people in charge of putting it all together.
We look forward to seeing everyone coming down to the Skeena Valley Farmers Market May 3rd. We open at 9 o'clock.
We're always happy to see farmers coming from further east, folks that are bringing in meat, vegetables from Kitwanga area, even the farmers around here that have lots of garlic and seasonal vegetables. It's really exciting to see all the different local foods that people are producing and harvesting here throughout the year.
Part of that excitement also stems from the fact that a vendor who initially debuted last year is set to become a regular fixture at this year's marketplace, and that vendor is a landscaping and garden company known as Skeena Greens.
So we just got accepted to be a seasonal vendor. We were just a drop-in vendor last year, and we felt really welcomed, and it was a lot of fun.
I'm really excited to have them here. They really fitted in well last year, and yeah, we're stoked to have them as a seasonal vendor.
Skeena Greens started selling here last year and then expressed an interest in becoming a seasonal vendor, which means that they'll have the same spot every week. And certainly as producers, as farmers, they are prioritized for spots here at the market. So we're very happy to see Skeena Greens express an interest in becoming a seasonal vendor, and we look forward to having them for a good portion of the season this year.
We're going to be selling our plant starts, some of our new herb growing kits, and some compost teas that we came up with a recipe for, and also our microgreens.
But since this Saturday will be the first edition of the Farmers Market in 2025, it is going to be kicked off in grand fashion with an opening ceremony.
We'll have a welcoming from an Indigenous elder, and we'll also have some comments from the Mayor of Terrace, and we look forward to having the Terrace Pipe and Drum Band come and perform and march up and down Market Street here as well. And like every week at the market, we do have live music here on the stage. So there's one artist from 9 till 11 a.m. and another artist from 11 until 1.
The market is set to run every Saturday up until the last Saturday of October, and the time frame that it will be open on those weekends is from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cael Maslin. A movement has spread across the Northwest in support of the man who lost his life on Haida Gwaii in what police believe was a targeted attack. CFTK-TV's Cael Matthews has more on that.
The Council of the Haida Nation has identified the man killed as Luke Pearson and described him as a kind, generous, caring, and innocent Haida man. There are reports that the family of the man accused harbored him before his arrest. Now, video on social media shows that family being driven out of Skidegate by an uprising of Haida people before the homes they had lived in were promptly demolished.
Out of the way, and we're gonna get going.
People of Haida Gwaii lined the streets in support and also drummed the family out on the ferry. But it didn't stop there. From Prince Rupert to Terrace, Kitwanga, Burns Lake, and in between, folks lined the highway at checkpoints and supervised the convoy of vehicles. People carried signs, many of which depicted justice for Luke and other slogans. The Council of the Haida Nation has said in a statement that the family, the Council of the Haida Nation, and Skidegate Band Council are in full support of the Major Crime Unit investigation taking place. It's not clear how far the movement will go, but there are reports it's headed for Prince George.
Still to come, the Prince Rupert RCMP celebrated its new detachment opening. Welcome back. Earlier this week, the city of Prince Rupert put on a ribbon-cutting ceremony as a way of officially celebrating the opening of their brand new Royal Canadian Mounted Police detachment. The new building is located on 145 Marketplace, and they also held a community barbecue there alongside the cutting of some cake. It began at 4:30 and lasted until 6 o'clock. Although despite the ceremony, this detachment has actually been operational for the past little while now, with the RCMP having already moved into it. As expected, people could give a call to that station or go to it in person if they are in need of the services of the Prince Rupert Police. At their regular council meeting from earlier this week, the town of Smithers came to a decision that will in part impact how they present themselves going forward. Council voted to adopt a refreshment of their brand standards, which includes a brand new logo for the town and is intended to help Smithers both modernize its communications as well as strengthen its visual identity. This idea for new branding came about in the Smithers Economic Development Plan and will result in all of the town's digital platforms transitioning quickly to this new look. As for updates to physical items like signage and municipal assets, those are set to be made in a more gradual manner so that the cost of those changes can be managed as effectively as possible. That wraps up this week's edition of Week in Review. Make sure to tune in to our regular newscasts on Monday at 5, 6, 6:30, and 11 o'clock here on CFTK-TV. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have a good weekend.